3 days away from UConn. Joining us now
It's me lobbying
on
to
the
get
phone, Blaine Fowler, BYU national champion, quarterback, dual threat analyst for BYUtv Sports. The man does it all. Blaine, our Twitter question today is, once you saw the depth chart, what was your biggest takeaway from it yesterday?
Well, if it stays as is, I think on the offensive line, they've sent a huge message to us that they really did put an emphasis on aggressiveness and mean, nasty mentality, and they valued that more than they valued experience. And I think that tells you exactly where they're at. They were not happy with the way they performed, especially in the red zone, especially on 3rd and short and 4th and short with knocking people off the ball. And they said, you know what, we'll go with some young guys because they're the nasty guys, and that's who we're going to go with.
It's interesting to see that you could possibly have 3 freshmen in that offensive line. Most notably, left tackle, the blind side on a right-handed quarterback, Ului Lapuahu. We talked about him a lot on signing day. Bronco Mendenhall, freaked out about him. I was like, wow, this is interesting. He won the starting job at left tackle. BYU expects big things from him, don't they, Blaine?
Yeah, and he's got good feet. He's long at 6'7", where he can get out on a linebacker that's coming. I mean, for a guy as young as he is, usually the footwork and the technique to play left tackle takes some time. But I'll tell you, he's looked good, and he's got that nasty edge about him that we've been talking about since last season. We talked last season. It was kind of a missing thing on that offensive line. Where's the one guy that could raise the aggressive, or I shouldn't say aggressive, the aggression level of that offensive line? And I think that they put a line together that is going to be more aggressive. We thought maybe that would be Tuni Kanuch, and we see him on the depth chart as an either-or. And so they're also feeling the same way about Lapuaho, that they can be some big nasties that'll get it done. And, youth didn't matter, evidently. It was about who's going to be physical and who's going to get it done. And they may have some growing pains with missed assignments, but they'd rather have guys out there on the field that are getting after it than guys that have experience.
BYU TV analyst Blaine Fowler with us on BYU Sports Nation. Okay, Blaine, if there were one thing that BYU could do at UConn to avoid a Virginia-type debacle, and we're taking the monsoon out of this. I know that's hard to do because it played such a huge role in last year's season opening game. But if there's one thing that BYU has to do to get a win at UConn, what is it?
Well, the most important thing is going to be to take care of the football, which I believe they will do with a now veteran quarterback in Taysom Hill. Usually that falls on the quarterback. You can have running backs fumble the football and receivers tip the ball up in the air, but bottom line is when you have a veteran quarterback, you turn the ball over less. And so they need to make sure that they don't have a real lopsided turnover margin battle. Because I believe that if you went 22 positions across the board, that BYU is going to be better in probably 70% of those positions. So they should win this ball game. That's a higher percentage than I would have given them against Virginia last year. If you would have gone all 22 of the starters on offense and defense, I'd say BYU is probably better in 60 to 65% of the positions. Virginia gets 5-star athletes. UConn doesn't get 5-star athletes, and I think that BYU is a better football team. So the great equalizer in football is turnover margin, and I think that if BYU takes care of the football, they're going to be in good shape. And then can I give you a 1A, Spencer? Can I give you a 1 and a 1A? That's my
yes,
1.
I will allow it. No. Don't listen to Jerem. I will allow it.
No.
Okay, that's why I asked Jerem, because Spencer, Jerem is a nice, experienced guy, and Spencer's like these young, aggressive guys. He's not putting up with anything. He's like, no, you cannot do it. So my 1A is there is the one position where UConn is really good, and their guy would start at BYU hands down is Jeremy Davis at wide receiver.
Yeah.
So the other thing you can't do is you can't give up 2 or 3 big-time plays over the top. And not necessarily over the top, because he's capable of running by you and getting a big play. And then he's also capable of catching a 3-yard ball, making 2 people miss, and going 70 yards for a touchdown. So the combination of turnover margin and then just making sure that Jeremy Davis is held in check and he doesn't get some big plays that swing momentum for that team at home. So that's 1 and 1A for me. Thank you, Spencer, for allowing me to go 1.
You are welcome,
It's
Blaine.
actually 1 and 2, but whatever.
No, it's 1A. See, have you
Jeremy,
been hanging around with these young offensive linemen? You're acting all tough guys.
yeah, I've been lifting with them. It's been fantastic. No, I haven't. Jeremy Davis is interesting because he had 71 catches but only 3 touchdowns. That stuck out to me. But why? Okay, I'm a huge fan of overlooking certain opponents, like Houston last year. I said 17+, it was a 1-point game. Why won't BYU beat UConn by 17 plus? Why wouldn't they?
It would be exactly what we just talked about, or if there's a monsoon. I talked to Dave McCann, who checked on the weather for us with our good buddy Eubanks.
Everybody is.
And so it looks like it's going to be just a nice night back there. It'll be hot and humid, but
sure
it'll be a nice night back there. So barring a monsoon, I think that BYU will live up to potential, and I think it's exactly the same things. The way UConn stays in the ball game is those two things that we talked about, and I don't think that BYU is going to overlook them because they're going to look at Virginia. Broncos talked about Virginia. He hasn't said the exact words, we overlooked them, but he did talk about focus, and maybe part of that focus was getting taken on and off the field multiple times during that game because of the weather. But he felt like they were not focused for the full ball game back there, and that was why they lost. Well, I think he has the attention of this team this year, and I think they're going to go back, and they're not going to look forward to Texas. I mean, the big risk is that UConn's going to look forward to Stony Brook,
And then Boise State, yeah. Stony Brook. Oh man,
they're overlooking BYU for Stony Brook.
They got Johnson and Smith. I mean, those guys are awesome.
Davis.
Yeah, and that's the big. If UConn looks past BYU to Stony Brook, they're really going to be in trouble.
Blaine Fowler with us on BYU Sports Nation.
Oh man,
you are a college football expert indeed, my friend. Hey, BYU football. The word around camp has been depth, and it's probably overused and overhyped. But what is the strongest position group in terms of depth on BYU's two deep, do you feel, Blaine?
Well, I would have said wide receiver, but there's some guys nicked up. I say Nick Kurtz.
Nicked up?
Yeah, get it? They're nicked up. And so, but it's still a deep group. When you got guys like Rosapo that's backing up, and Keanu Nelson backing up, I think this is a good group. Mitch Matthews, Kurt Henderson, Jordan Leslie, Ross, Keanu. That is a really, really talented. Taryn Houck. This is as deep as I believe BYU's ever been at wide receiver. BYU's had great frontline 2 or 3 guys at times, but to be that deep and to think that Nick Kurtz is out and we're still talking about that quality of depth at wide receiver, I think that Taysom is going to have a lot of targets to throw the football to. In the end, I think that Jordan Leslie is going to end up being his top target this year. But I think that there's enough depth that he can just read the defense and not worry about who's lined up where and just deliver the football to the right spot. And he's going to be confident that he's got guys that can catch it and do great things with it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that BYU with the skill positions is extremely confident. You talk about youth. It's on the O-line a little bit. It's not with the skill positions, the quarterback, the receivers, the running backs. Aside from Algernon Brown as a sophomore, you're looking at a lot of juniors and seniors. Trey Dye may be in the mix at freshman. But I'm with you. I think that Jordan Leslie, in this game and the season, ends up being the top target for Taysom Hill, and that BYU fans immediately know who this guy is after game 1.
Yeah, the thing I was most impressed with as we watched him was that he didn't seem to miss a beat in picking up the offense. And that tells you not only was he experienced, but he was a student of the game.
Yeah.
So he came in, and during his time at UTEP, he obviously understood the whole concept of the passing game because he looked at what BYU was doing. He immediately understood where he was supposed to be and where he was in the concept of the whole play worked. He's in the right spots. He's running good routes. He's not dropping the football. He understands changes when the defenses change, the adjustments that they're making. And so here's a veteran football player that wasn't just a guy that just learned what his route was at UTEP. He understood the full concept of why he was running that route, and I think that really helped him. I knew I was going to be impressed with his physical capabilities. He was a big-time player at UTEP last year. But I've been most impressed with his knowledge of football and the way he's picked up BYU's offense so quickly. And now Taysom Hill has a ton of confidence in him.
Joining us on BYU Sports Nation, former national champion quarterback Blaine Fowler, our dual threat analyst, BYUtv Sports. We just talked to Desmond Connor of the Hartford Courant. He's the UConn beat writer. And he said that UConn is married to the idea of playing 2 quarterbacks. Blaine, I cannot recall any team ever benefiting from a 2-quarterback situation consistently.
What? I'm going to give you one, Spencer.
Okay.
How about Leak
Robbie Bosco and Blaine Fowler?
How about Leak and Tebow at Florida for a national championship?
But
it was situational.
Tebow was like a goal line guy.
It was situational.
Yeah. But it was a consistent 2-quarterback system, and they had different roles. But I agree with you. two guys that are not dissimilar. They're very similar. Cochran is maybe a stronger, more physical athlete. He's younger as a sophomore. And the bottom line is they didn't win a lot of games last year, and they were 3-1 when he played. To me, that right there tells you a story. He probably ought to get the majority of the reps. But what that tells me is they're not sure. They're really not sure who the guy should be. And so, so what do? They give them both playing time. And I can't imagine that they really are long-term committed to that. They're committed to that until somebody really takes the reins of that position, takes over, and then I think you'll see that Bob Diaco will settle in on somebody. But, yeah, the message that they're sending to me right now is, well, we think that this is our guy, but maybe he's not.
Is it a good thing? I mean, is it a good thing for BYU fans that they're planning on playing two quarterbacks?
Well, I think the fact that they're not confident in one is a good thing.
Yes.
I mean, that's a chink in the armor, right? You know what? If I'm trying to think through, as we're getting ready for this game, advantages for UConn. And really the only advantage I can, outside of being at home, is the unknown for BYU. And that is they can go study film of Bob Diaco's defense at Notre Dame, but they're really not sure if that's exactly what he's going to run at UConn. They can study the personnel for UConn, but they're really not sure who's going to be where. So there's just so many unknowns that BYU is going to have to be pretty basic in this ball game. They can't scout them in depth and go, hey, the same coordinators have been there the last 4 years. When they line up in this alignment, this is exactly what they do 95% of the time. So we're going to bring a corner blitz off the inside receiver every time they line up like that. You can't have that specific a game plan against a team where there's this many unknowns. So now you got to rely on being better than that team and on being pretty basic, especially on the defensive side of the ball. You can do whatever you want on offense and pick up blitzes, but defensively, I think we'll see a little more basic game plan than we may as the season progresses, just because of the unknown. That's really the only significant advantage maybe UConn has going into this ball game.
Blaine, we thank you for the time. As always, it's a pleasure to talk to you. And anytime you want to deliver a 1 and 1A, I would be happy to hear those.
Come on, man.
I appreciate that. See, Spencer's good to me. He's just good to me. Jerem's like, Spencer. I don't know. He's just he's become a mean guy. I don't know.
I'm a producer sometimes. I've got to be mean.
Jeremy is the, or Jerem is the.
It's Jerome, Blaine.
Okay, it's Jerome. No. Jerem is the Toonie Canooch of the broadcast team now. He's kind of
overhyped.
He's the edgy guy.
No, just kidding. No, I'm excited for Toonie to play. Blaine, we appreciate the time. We can't wait to see you on Countdown to Kickoff this Friday night.
All right, guys. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Blaine.